Hey everyone, welcome back to Medlex Story, where we break down complex ideas and make them easy to understand. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you never miss the latest content. Today we delve into fascinating topic in logic and critical thinking. Currently, I'm going to discuss about affirming the consequent, and it's a basic idea in logic. It's a for a beginner tutorial. So affirming the consequent is a common logical fallacy that can trip up even the sharpest mind. It's a form of reasoning that can seem correct on the surface, but actually leads to the false conclusions. In this video, we will explore what affirming the consequent is, how to support it, but I'm going to go through very simple examples where you can start understanding the overall structural arguments and see that the structural argument is actually a flawed and not based on the examples which can illustrate. Let's take this example. If I'm going to present some arguments here, this is conditional statement. So now this conditional statement says if someone has the flu, they will experience symptoms such as fever, cough, and fatigue. If this is our premise one, then this is like the premise one, and then we have another. Let's take observation. Let's take example. Let's suppose you notice that your friend has a fever, cough, and fatigue. Because in your experience, you maybe come across you always maybe you have seen that during flu people have these symptoms called fever, cough, and fatigue. So, according to your experience, you have this pre-assumption that if someone has a flu, they will experience symptoms as fever, cough, and fatigue. So the problem is, if someone has a flu, then it is true that they're gonna have fever, cough, fatigue. That's fine. But if you reverse the thing, let's suppose you only see that your friend has fever, cough, and fatigue. You don't know what the cause, but you only see the fever, cough, and fatigue that they have suffering from symptoms. So you come to the conclusion that your friend, you assume the conclusion that your friend must have flu. However, this conclusion overlooks other possible causes for these symptoms, such as common cold, allergies, even exhaustion. Just because someone exhibits symptoms associated with particular condition doesn't automatically mean they have that condition. There's a logical error here. Let me represent what you meant. A logical error means the observed symptoms, because you only observe symptoms, which is fever, cough, fatigue, and you try to associate with some sort of disease without diagnosing, without evidence. You're just assuming that because you have this preconceived notions or you have experience that it's the case that people have. Yeah, it's true that if people have flu, they exhibit such symptoms, but it's not always true. There's a many disease which share common symptoms. Let me make it more clear. So here could see that let's suppose we have three disease A, B, C, and these disease. There's many kind of disease. For example, disease A can consume allergy. Disease B you can say exhaustion. Or disease C you can say flu. They all share a common symptoms, a shared symptom. So this is why just on the basis of symptoms you can't derive that. Now it's difficult to map which disease is causing it or not unless you do the diagnosis and discover evidence or other symptoms which is uniquely identified with a certain kind of disease which is not uniquely found in other disease. Remember, with proper medical diagnosis we can able to come to the conclusion that what disease causing these particular symptoms. So in critical thinking we should avoid jumping to conclusion based solely on observations or observed outcomes. Always consider alternative explanations and evaluate evidence carefully. And just based on circumstances, evidence which you see the symptoms doesn't mean that it is the disease which you perceive in experience. There's always multiple There's many diseases who share a common symptoms. So this is just one instance of affirming the consequent, where you're taking the certain observed evidence and observed phenomena, and you try to reconstruct the reason out of it without doing any critical analysis or collecting any evidence. um, and it could be like you're just misinterpreting the circumstantial evidence, which is you without because it's because you haven't done any, you haven't manifest any evidence or any relation which give you any strong holding that this is the case or not. Now, this fallacy can bear a serious consequence, particularly within legal frameworks. The potential for misinterpretation of circumstantial evidence can lead to neglect of other viable explanations. Under a legal, let's take a legal angle on this fallacy. A very simple example, little bit complex scenario, not much complex, but I just want to make my point clear here. What I mean. So so let's say this is a complex scenario. So John, our main character, he purchased a knife from a local shop, and after mere 2 days later, he's met with a horrifying sight. Upon returning home, his wife is lifeless in the kitchen, the victim, and she became a victim of stabbing. Remember, after 2 days of purchasing a knife. Now, in a state of shock, he definitely contacted police. And upon their arrival, the police now they make John a primary suspect, and then they start an investigation because then they come to this fact that 2 days ago the John brought a knife before this tragic incident. Now, at this juncture, the police could potentially succumb to the logical fallacy from it consequent. At this juncture, this line of reasoning, however, neglects to consider key factors. First, mere possessing a knife doesn't inherently label someone as a murderer. Knives are commonplace household items with multitude of use. Secondly, there could be a myriad of reasons why John bought the knife, such as for culinary purposes or other mundane tasks. However, it is imperative for the police to conduct a comprehensive investigation to amass more evidence for drawing conclusions. They should pursue other leads, such as potential suspects or motives, or collect forensic evidence like fingerprints and relying solely on like this coincidence that John bought a knife and his wife was subsequently killed with one is a classic case of affirming consequence. This could result in John being wrongfully accused without substantial evidence. The fallacy of affirming the consequence in the form of modus ponens can be represented as follows. Like if John purchased a knife and their spouse is killed, then they were planning to kill their spouse. John purchased a knife and his wife was killed, therefore John was planning to kill his wife. Now this reasoning is flawed because assume that the only reason for purchasing a knife is to commit a murder. Like if anyone purchases a knife, is always gonna be commit because you're gonna commit a murder. Which is not necessarily true. It has also failed to consider potential causes for the wife's death. Thus, it is fallacious argument. Thank you for watching.